On today's episode of the CLS Experience, we have a very exclusive treat. She's a dynamic wellness advocate, multi-time cookbook author, editor, and healthy recipe developer. No big deal. She's the former food director for Mind Body Green, and she currently graces the platform as their contributing food editor, making waves with her insightful pieces, Big Facts. With features in a plethora of elite publications, her footprint in the wellness world is undeniable and second to none. Beyond her written accolades, she's the voice behind her authentic and dynamite podcast, where she dives deep with the best in the wellness industry and gives awesome tips on how to overcome anxiety. Her candid discussions on wellness trends, coupled with her personal journey navigating anxiety, make her a beacon of authenticity and relatability, and her content will penetrate your soul. She's just a juggernaut in all facets of life and a terrific wife and human. Please welcome the insightful, radiant, and beautiful, abundant Liz Moody. How you doing, Liz?
I mean, better now. I love getting to hear that little hype up. I feel like I need you to come hype me up every morning.
Sign me up. Let's do it. And I'm super excited for this one. I'll be honest with you, we were chatting before we hit record. I was checking out a lot of your content, which I just want to be very intense right now. I suggest all of our listeners do immediately after this episode. If you're not already familiar, it's awesome. And you speak to me, and also you're witty, and it's just so much fun. And obviously so much wisdom too, and you're helping people. And I encourage everybody to play catch up. What I think will be most valuable today is we just have a dynamite, awesome conversation. Before we dive in, we're going to get a little nuts. You ready for me?
Oh, I'm so ready. I'm excited.
Liz, when you wake up every day, for you personally, what are some non-negotiables for you?
My number one non-negotiable is what I call my circ walk. Circ is short for circadian. So this is just 5 to 20 minutes outside in the morning, as close to when I wake up and the sun wakes up as possible. This is a little easy for me because I'm not an early riser. So the sun is most often awake when I get out of bed, which is something else we can talk about. I think there is a health halo around waking up early, and you do not need to do that to live your best life. But as close to when you wake up and the sun comes up as possible, you're getting that sunlight in your eyes. And what that's going to do is it's going to set your master clock, and your master clock controls 99% of the cells in your body. So your master clock is not only going to impact things that you think relate to a clock, like how well you sleep and your energy, but it's also setting the clock for things like your microbiome, your hormone health, all of these different facets of your body. So I view my circ walk as like a multivitamin, something that I take every single day, and it's gonna benefit my whole body health. I look like absolute garbage when I do it. I feel like one of the secrets is to not try to be cute. You just roll out of bed, get outside. You can stand there. I like to do a little walk around the block because walking helps stoke your creativity. It gets your brain going, all of these things, extra benefits. But that's my number one non-negotiable that I do no matter what.
I don't think I could love you anymore right now. This is awesome. And one thing that you said there, and I thought it was pretty cool and special, is that you don't have to wake up before the sun to live your best life. And I saw another thing that you were talking about on a piece of content that was really juicy, and it was similar. And it's like everybody in this space, they have like these things that you have to do, like, cold plunge, all these things, but you got to find what works for you. Like, what are the habits that you need to practice and so forth. And it's so easy to get, I don't want to say comparison syndrome, but like there's so many people telling you to do this, that, and the other thing, but you got to find what works for you and what feels good for you personally, right?
100%. I have a tip in my book called Find Your Why. And I think that is so important because we live in this social media day and age, and often we're adding all of these habits to our to-do list, and we literally have no idea why we're doing them except for somebody told us to. So I think getting really clear on your goals, the problems you're trying to solve, your needs, we have a lot of specific ways in the book to dive into that, but knowing why you're doing everything that you're doing is so critical. We have such limited time, and we don't want to be filling that with somebody else's health goals. And then to the point of waking up early, we all have unique chronotypes. So that's sort of our body's clock, the way that we function best. And many people have an evening chronotype, which means they're just like a little bit more awake at night. You'd go to bed naturally later. And we live in a world that just puts up on a pedestal this morning chronotype. And if you have to wake up in the morning to go to a job, whatever, we have tips in the book that will help you do that. There's a really cool study that shows if you just do a minute of aerobic exercise, like jumping jacks or something, it fights that grogginess in your brain and you can get up and get ready to go. It beats a little bit of that chronotype based sluggishness you might have in the morning. But if you are an evening chronotype and you are forcing yourself to wake up at 5 a.m. just because you think that that's like the healthy, wellnessy thing to do, you're actually hurting your health and you're not working towards your goals. So I think being really aware of our unique physiology is critical.
It's not a one size fits all. Like it's a case by case. You got to find what's good for you.
Yeah, I'm an evening chronotype. I love being up at night. I have really creative thoughts at night and I wake up around 8, 9 sometimes in the morning and I don't feel bad about that at all.
Shame on you, right?
Yeah. Do you know, are you a morning person?
I'm a morning person. I guess I get an edge from waking up early because that's where I create some time and it gives me a little bit of momentum because it's kind of like before the rest of the world. And I try to go to bed earlier. So I guess I'm a morning person. Yeah, I would say so.
I love what you say about momentum though, because I do think that morning momentum is so important. And for me, there's a tip in the book and it's a motto that I live by called objects in motion stay in motion and objects at rest stay at rest.
Yep.
It's Isaac Newton's motto technically, but
Yep.
I'm borrowing it and I'm using it for my purposes. And I think that having a little morning win regardless of what time you wake up is so helpful. So even if you are a later riser, which I am, my circ walk is a win. I do a morning workout, that's a win. I make my green smoothie, I end my shower on cold. Those are all little tiny wins that are going to help set my day up to stay in motion, to have the successes that I want to have regardless of the time of day you're waking up.
Beautifully said. I think momentum is so important. I think it's the hardest thing to get and the easiest thing to lose. But once you get it and you're able to, I don't want to say hack, but cultivate momentum, the wins at your back, and then you get that edge no matter what.
100%. Yeah. And I think the best way to get that momentum is to do the teeny tiniest thing that gives you that momentum. I think it's one of the reasons people like making their bed so much is because it takes just a few minutes, but it gives you that win. And then once you've made your bed, you can go do another thing. Again, objects at rest stay at rest. So if you are continuing to be at rest, you're not going to take the steps that you need to do the day that you want to do. So I'd say the teeny tiniest thing, make a cup of tea, do 5 squats, make your bed. What is the littlest thing you can do to get in motion so that that inertia, that momentum will propel you forward?
I love it. It's one of the reasons why I'm kind of guess an old soul, but I'm very old school. I have these like a little piece of paper and all these things written down by hand, not just.
Oh, cool. Wait, so are those like habits?
So these specifically is something else, but every day I have a conquer list, and every morning I write down the stuff on the agenda for the day, and then I get that dopamine hit when I cross it off or I highlight it, and that
I love that.
Yeah,
the idea of calling it a conquer list too, like a to-do list feels like, oh, this is hard. Conquer list is like, I am going to tackle these things. I'm a winner. I love that.
Yeah, I used to, if I'm being honest, I never said this before. I used to call it conquer and destroy, but I think now it's just the conquer.
You were like, that's a little aggressive.
Yeah. This is so much fun. You mentioned your new book a couple times, 100 Ways to Change Your Life, the science of leveling up health, happiness, relationships, and success. Seems like it covers it all. Why this book now?
It does. Well, the reason I think that it covers it all is because everything is connected. And when we silo things like our health from our relationships, from our career success, we're not going to achieve the things that we want to achieve as easily in all of those places. Like if your microbiome is messed up, you're going to feel more stressed on a day-to-day basis because of that gut-brain connection. If you feel more stressed on a day-to-day basis, you're not going to be able to show up at your workplace in the way that you want to show up. You're not going to be able to show up in your relationships in the way that you want to show up. And that's going to stress you out further, which is going to further disrupt your microbiome. So whether or not we want it to all be connected, it is. And I think addressing it as if it is all connected is such a key tool for unlocking the level of success that we want to unlock. So that's why I put it all together. And then I really wanted this book to do a few different things. One, I think there's a lot of books out there that make you feel really good while you're reading them and you're like, yes, I'm inspired, I can do this. But then you kind of have that moment afterwards where you're like, well, wait. What do I actually do? Like, what is the step that I take today to change my life? And so each of the 100 tips in this book, first you get the science, and then you get an action step that you can do to enact that tip to change your life with that tip. So I picture this as a tool that you can read the whole thing through, you can make it a plan and do all the tips in order, and your life will definitely be changed within a week, but by the end of it, you'll just total transformation. But also you can leave it out on your coffee table, and when you have a problem you're trying to solve, when you need a dose of motivation or inspiration, you can read a tip. It takes 5 minutes. It's so good for those little interstitial moments where you don't want to pick up your phone, but you want to have a satisfying, complete experience. You read a tip for 5 minutes and your life will be changed.
That's it. I love it. And I couldn't agree more, specifically with like actionable steps, like the spirituality, the science, that's so great, but we have to meet it with the practical. And one thing I also did, because I feel the same as you. And so one thing that I did intentionally in our book was at the end of every single bite-sized chapter, there's a call to action. Like there's something for you to ask yourself or for you to do, like a mini homework assignment. And that always, it gives it a little bit more life. So this way, the book inspired me, but what do I actually do next? And then
what should I actually do is such a governing principle for everything that I do. It's like so interesting. Thank you for the information. What should I actually do? So I absolutely love that you included that in your book. And I'm sure your readers, it's one of the many reasons that people are probably responding to it so well.
Yeah, thank you. You mentioned the word microbiome a couple times. We've had some really well-known doctors on here and stuff like that, and they talk about it. But I feel like your definition will probably be much more relatable for the audience that doesn't necessarily 100% understand what that word is or what that means. How would you define that?
So we actually have a number of different microbiomes. We have our oral microbiome, we have our skin microbiome, we have our gut microbiome. When people use microbiome colloquially, they're tending to be talking about the gut microbiome, which does have a really large impact on the rest of our body. So these all kind of live on their own, but they also interact synergistically. And so when we talk about things like probiotics and prebiotics and what's happening in our gut microbiome, we're really talking about all of these bacteria. There are trillions of bacteria that are living on our skin, in our mouth, in our eyeballs, in our gut. And we want them to be thriving and healthy and happy. So we get them to that place by treating them well, by making sure they're well fed, they're getting the things that they want to eat, by making sure that we're not killing them off with stress and things like that destroy their health. You treat your microbiome as like a little part of you that you want to nurture and take care of. And that's going to be so key for your overall health and feeling good every day.
I love it. I love this. There's so many places we can take this conversation, and I want to dive much more into the book. But I did happen to see that you changed the name of your podcast, and I read as to why. And I just want to say I'm so proud of you, because it seems to me, correct me if I'm wrong, you changed it to the Liz Moody podcast because you are the vibe, you are the brand, and now maybe you're not typecast into just this. You could talk about more things and actually help more people. Is that right?
100%. And thank you so much for saying that. That's such a kind comment, because it is a nerve-wracking thing to make a change like this. I've built such a wonderful and incredible audience with the Healthier Together podcast. And you're like, okay, are you guys ready to come along on this journey with me? But I do feel like ultimately the old title was a little bit limiting just in terms of how people were viewing the idea of health. I've always viewed health as healthier finances, healthier relationships, healthier guts, all of these different facets of your life. But sometimes when you say health, people think supplements, people think just like the food that you're eating and things like that. And on the podcast, like one of our most popular series is the pros and cons of having kids. And I don't think people would think of that as health, but I'm like, that's a key part of living our best lives. So I really wanted to change the name so that we could encompass all of the things that we're already talking about.
Yeah. Do you have kids, Liz?
I have a cat.
Fair enough. So yes, I have a son too. He's a killer Shih Tzu, half Shih Tzu, half poodle. But I saw that you were opening up the space for a conversation like that, and I thought it was so beautiful and so necessary. And I want to acknowledge you for that. We should talk about stuff like that more often.
Absolutely. And I think taking these topics that some people consider taboo or shameful, or bringing them and bringing those topics into the light is so, so important to me, because it is one of the biggest decisions that we will ever make is, do we want to create a new human life and bring it into the world? And we act like, first of all, people are always like, well, if it's not a hell yes, it's a hell no. Like, you shouldn't be spending time making this decision. And I'm like, why would I spend 3 hours researching on the internet what cell phone to buy and just expect myself to know whether or not I should bring a human life into the world?
True. Yeah.
It's
And
insane. Do you know if you want to have kids?
I do. Yeah. One of the things I'm excited for most is, God willing, to be a dad. We're engaged, so hopefully in the not distant future. But like, I have one sibling, my best friend, my brother. He's a little bit older than me. He has a son, my nephew, and actually I'm gonna have a niece too next month. And
Congratulations.
thank you. Yeah, I'm super excited about that. I love kids, and I just have, I don't know, since I reinvented myself, I have like so much love. It's a little weird. But yeah, I do want to, and I'm excited about that. But I love what you said right there. And that is that, like, not everything is black and white. There's a lot of gray area, right? Like, if someone asks, like, do you want to have a kid? Like, it's not yes or no. It's like, well, it depends, right? Like where am I at with my career? Like, what's going on? Like, am I ready for that response? There's many different components that go into that particular topic, and others as well.
I love that you say that. I interviewed this wonderful therapist on one of the episodes of the Pros and Cons of Having Kids series, and her whole job is working with people when they're making this decision. And one of the things that she said that really stuck with me was, we view, should I have kids or should I not have kids, is mostly an emotional decision. Like, what is my heart telling me? And while that's important information to have, it's also important information to have, what do I want my lifestyle to look like? What is my financial situation? If I'm going to need familial help, what is my relationship with my family? What is my relationship with my partner? And really considering these pragmatic elements versus just this heart first decision that we always make it seem like. So I love that you are acknowledging the pragmatic questions we should be asking ourselves.
Yeah. How about you? Do you want to have a human kid?
Thank you for distinguishing. My husband and I right now are thinking about having one. So that was a really interesting thing that came out of the podcast, which is that for many people who are sitting on the fence, for some people who are sitting on the fence, the answer should be no. And we dive into how to kind of know what that answer should be for you. But for some people who are sitting on the fence, having one can be a really nice compromise where you get the experience of raising a kid, having a kid, that really unique life experience, but you're not kind of as deep into it as somebody who's having 2 kids or 3 kids. It's kind of a nice meet in the middle compromise. And she also really debunks the myth that only children are less healthy, less happy, less socialized, less acclimated. Those are all myths. Only children are doing great. And there's research behind that. So I think that's what we're leaning towards right now.
Good for you, right? Do what feels good for you guys.
Yeah. I think it'll be a fun journey. And I think we're getting closer to feeling like we're at a time in our life where we're ready to take it.
Yeah. Liz, can I ask you a personal question?
Yeah. Is there something more personal than, are you gonna grow a baby in your uterus?
Probably not. How young are you?
I'm 37.
37 years young, just getting warmed up.
Yeah, I also think that she said on the podcast, and I thought this was really interesting. I said, what do you think is the ideal age to have a kid? And she works with people who struggle with fertility. She's a fertility counselor. So she really, really acknowledges that there are situations that impact that. But she still said that she thinks the ideal age to have a kid is 38 years old, because then you've basically been an adult for 20 years. At that point, you've gotten to have your adult life. And I thought that was a really interesting sentiment to sit on. And it certainly was comforting to me, because I think, especially as a woman, society has been telling me that I'm essentially aging out of my use to it for years. You know what I mean? Women are given so many messages about how we have to look a certain way, the idealization of youth, how we have to procreate quickly, and blah, blah, blah. And I think that there's some real biological things to consider. Like I said, this therapist does fertility counseling, and we talk about that in the episode. But also, I'm huge on the fact that like my value is not diminishing as I age, it's increasing.
Ooh, that's a nugget right there. That was beautiful. Love it. Um, so many things I want to ask you just because I think it'll be so valuable. I was checking out your content, which again, I highly suggest everybody do immediately follow this conversation. And one thing that comes up a lot, or that I see most people acknowledge that they know that they're here for something more than they're currently settling for. And I think a lot of people don't go for it because they think that it's too late or they're too old. And I saw you having a discussion about practical things that help when you're feeling behind in life. And I thought that was so beautiful and valuable. And I'd love for you to unpack that a bit.
I think the entire notion of feeling behind is such bullshit. It's one of those societal things that we're told by people who want to make us feel a certain way, mostly so they can sell us things. The worse we feel, the more likely we are to purchase things that will make us feel better. If life is something that you are trying to race through, the end destination is death. Like, why are we trying to race through to get to the end destination of death? And once you start to realize that all of the notions of timelines are fake, they're people trying to control you, they're people trying to put their own vulnerabilities and insecurities onto you, they're people who are not sure about their own choices and they're looking for validation from your choices, and they're people who are trying to sell you things. And so for me, stepping back and questioning, where do these beliefs come from? Is this true for me at this point in my life, has been so freeing. That's let me be okay with having kids, I think, a little bit later than I'm told often in society that I should. It's let me be okay making huge career transitions later in my life. It's let me feel so much freer with just pursuing the path that I want to pursue. I have a tip in the book that's about how negative aging beliefs literally take 7.5 years off our lives. 7.5 literal years off our lives. You will live 7.5 years longer. This is based on research from Dr. Becca Levy at Yale, if you have positive beliefs about aging. And once you begin to notice the negative aging beliefs that permeate our society, it is a glass shattering moment. You'll be looking to the left and you'll see a greeting card that's like, you're over the hill because you're 30. You'll have a friend who's like, we can't go out dancing tonight, we're too old for that. It's everywhere. And I've made a point of calling it out in my own head, calling it out when I see it publicly, and also making it clear that to myself that I don't believe that's true. Like, I love going out dancing. I'm not going to stop going out dancing at any age because dancing is fun. Like, why are we limiting ourselves in these ways? It is not only making our life worse right now, but it is literally costing us 7.5 years.
Yeah, I believe it. And this is why it's so important to work on our consciousness and unplug from the matrix and realize that none of this stuff is actually real. It becomes real because people buy into it. Like, I bought into my Wall Street story and thought that was it for me. And then I considered it a different choice. And then all of a sudden, all the limitation turned into possibilities and opportunities. But you're right. It's so reinforced that it's like taboo to, you're too old for this or it's too late for that. And people say thoughts become things because we give it energy in life. So if you think like as you get older, like things deteriorate, that's exactly what you're going to manifest. And then on the contrary, if you think like a fine wine, to be honest with you, I can't wait for my 40s, God willing, because a lot of the big successful people that I've interviewed on the show, they all say that they didn't really put it all together or hit their stride until their mid to late 40s. And like, I'm not rushing to get there, but that's a time frame that I'm really excited about exploring.
Well, and I love that you say that, because one of Dr. Becca Levy's tips is to find those positive aging role models, those people that we can look to and say, wow, it only gets better. And also, to the other thing that you said, a lot of it is about that attribution that we're doing mentally. So like, if our hip hurts, instead of saying, oh my gosh, I'm getting old, my hip hurts, my hip's going to hurt forever, be like, did I do a really hard workout the other day? Like, are there other reasons that I could attribute this thing to outside of just I'm getting older and this is my new reality?
Yes. Amen. This is great. If somebody takes it and applies it, right? This is potential power. But
Yeah, it absolutely is. It's a superpower to not feel limited by the bullshit societal messages
yeah,
of who you should be, and instead be able to ask yourself, who do I want to be?
yeah. And also you could look up to me because I could tell you that life's good and I'm significantly older than you.
How old are you?
38 years young.
You're significantly older than me.
But yeah, it's a
I
great.
love that you say 30. Okay, I should use that. How young are you? That's fun.
I made a
Yeah.
conscious effort to do that recently, and it makes everybody feel good.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And it just also it again kind of begins to shift your brain towards like, this is not a limiting thing, this is a growth thing.
Yeah. And there's a lot of talk these days about like anti-aging and stuff like that. And I don't know so much about it, so I don't want to speak on it. But I know there's things that we can do, even like mentally, to slow down the process so we can feel young and vibrant and radiant, even as our body, gets a little bit older.
Yeah, and I love that in terms of not thinking about it so much as anti-aging, but what can I do? My entire philosophy, the philosophy behind this book, the philosophy behind my podcast is how can I feel as good right now and feel as good in the long term? And I think a lot of the health world, we sacrifice the right now for the long term, and then our life gets boring and stressful in the pursuit of this greater notion of feeling good in the long run. And I think we can do both. I really think we can feel good now and we can feel good later.
Yeah. You do something really, really, really magical. It's like you talk about real life stuff and make it so normal, where if someone was listening, now going backwards feels abnormal. Yeah, I want to acknowledge you for that. And one of the things I saw you talking about was that you once in a while perhaps fight with your husband, which spoiler alert, like if you don't fight with someone that you're with every day, that's a little weird. And right, it have to be like huge fights, but maybe disagreement or some bickering. But I love that you said some ground rules, and that is no bringing up the past. Is that right?
Yeah, that's one of my favorite rules. There's a tip in the book that is about establishing the rules for fighting in advance. And I think this can be so helpful because in the moment, there's emotions involved. We're fired up. We're not our best people when we're in the middle of a fight. But if you can come together in a partnership before, when you're level headed, like over a yummy meal or something like that, and just say, what are our rules for fighting? And we offer some suggested rules in the book, but it's going to be unique to each couple. And one of the ones that's changed my partnership the most is not bringing up the past, because we would get stuck in this like, well, a month ago you said this, and then the other person would be like, well, I didn't say that. And then you can't prove it because you don't have cameras on you at all, that you're not like, roll the tape. And so we're allowed to bring up the past in the context of, I'm feeling really disappointed right now. And maybe that's the culmination of the past experiences, but we're not allowed to point to these realities that we might not agree on, that we get stuck in the picking apart of like, was that true? Was that not true? We instead focus on how are we feeling at the moment? How can we show up for each other at this moment? What is the problem that we're trying to solve in this specific moment in time? And it has been such a game changer. Like if you want to be like, you never unload the dishwasher, and instead you can say, I was really hoping that you would unload the dishwasher today. I'm really busy right now. I would like to feel like this is an equal partnership. This is something that we had agreed that would sit within your responsibility area. And I feel unsupported when you don't take on your tasks in our household. That's so much more helpful than being like, you never unload the dish. Well, then of course I'm going to want to be like, well, actually, I unloaded the dishwasher last week. You just didn't see me. You know what I mean?
Sure. Then it becomes a little bit like resentful and petty.
Yeah. And the point of a fight with a partner. And I think we kind of lose sight of this sometimes. I get it. I want to win. Like when I'm in a fight with my partner, I want to be like, I'm going to show you why you're wrong and I'm right. But the point of fighting with this person that we've committed our life to, with this person we're trying to build a life with, is to work something out so that we can both be satisfied in the relationship. We are on the same team. And I think setting your rules for fighting ahead of time can really help you stay on the same team in the middle of a fight.
100%. And sometimes when you get angry, it like clouds your judgment a little bit.
Sometimes I feel like every time
Yeah.
I am my least sane and helpful self when I'm angry. I'm just it's silly, and I need that help sometimes. I didn't have a particularly like sitcom-y childhood. I wasn't taught how to fight well by my family, and I am not my best self. It's something that I'm constantly working on, is the way
Yeah.
that I fight. Sometimes my husband will just take me and like force me to do a 30-second or 1-minute hug in the middle of a fight, because he
Uh,
was raised by like parents who fight well and he is securely attached. And it's the last thing I want to do in the moment. I'm just like, no, why are you hugging me? But then he's like, we are on the same team. Like, the goal of this is to come out with a better understanding of each other's needs and a better ability to meet each other's needs than where we were before.
that's really beautiful. I'm actually going to take that. Next time my fiance's little nuts. She's from Ukraine. She's been here since she was 14, but she has that like savage immigrant mentality on her. She's a little more savage than I am. Next time she's, on one, I'm just gonna hug her.
I think that physical contact can be so helpful. Just that little bit of reminder that like, wait, we do love each other. Like, we're not trying to hurt each other. We're trying to love each other better.
Beautifully said. Yeah, I love it. I wanted to ask you, how was your Audible book experience?
Oh my God, it was so hard. Everybody warned me that it was going to be so hard. Did you read
Same.
yours?
I did actually just
Yeah.
dropped this week, but same. A lot of my friends gave me a heads up, and they might have underestimated. It's very demanding and taxing. Would you agree?
I would completely agree. It's also like embarrassing in its own way too, because you have these like producers and sound engineers, and they can hear every single sound that comes out of your mouth. And when you read a lot, I don't know if you had this experience, but my audio producer told me it was common, which is that because you're reading so many words, you burp more than you normally would.
I didn't
And
know that. That's great.
so I would be sitting there, and maybe I had like a kombucha for lunch or something too, but I'm just like, oh, I got to burp. And then you kind of like turn away, and you have all these people sitting there waiting for you to burp so that you can like continue on reading your book. It can make one self-conscious if you're not careful. But I enjoyed the experience overall. I got to do it in this little studio right outside of Aspen, Colorado, because we were nomading in Colorado at the time. And it was by a river, and it's this iconic studio that like Jimmy Buffett and Stevie Nicks have recorded in. And that felt really cool. And I was honestly really happy with my book. How did you feel about your book after reading every single word in it out loud?
I gained such a greater appreciation for it, because like you reread it a couple times, like when you're going through edits and
It's
stuff.
so different though. Like I feel like I read it with my eyeballs
Yeah,
30 times by the end of the process, but
right.
actually speaking each word out loud is such a different experience.
It hits differently.
It
Wow,
really does.
you
Yeah,
beautifully
it really
articulated it.
does.
Right after, to be honest with you, like it's my first book. I'm a beginner essentially as an author. I'm not claiming to be Stephen King, but I knew the content was good. But I don't know. You're right. Like you just said, I read it a couple times in my eyeballs. But then when I went to the studio, I set an audacious goal to bang it out in 2 days, and I did.
Oh,
It was like a workout. I know I couldn't speak for a day, but after that, I remember I was so jacked. It made me like really lean into book launch mode, and I was so proud, and I could stand behind it, and I felt so differently after speaking it out loud.
yeah, same. And it's a fun process too, because you can put that intonation into the words that you intended. Like you can kind of add a little bit of extra
Oof,
meaning that's not even on the
enthusiasm.
page, which is really nice. I can't believe you did it in we did 4 days, and that felt like a marathon.
How many words is your book?
I think it's 89,000.
Well, it's a lot more than mine. Mine's 50,000.
Okay. It
That's
was
good. That's great.
yeah, my voice was very, as you said, my book is all the things. So we
Yeah.
needed all the words. I think we started at over 130,000 words, and we had to edit it down to that.
Wow. So
Yeah.
maybe keep that for if and when there's another one.
We it was actually a really satisfying process. I was scared to do it because I was like, oh, am I going to lose all of these things that are really important to me in the book? But it made it so that we had to jam pack every single word that we chose, ended up being so intentional. Every single tip ended up being so jam packed. So I was happy with it at the end, but it was nerve wracking to be told.
Yeah,
I didn't know that it couldn't be 130,000 words.
that's funny. That's crazy. Yeah. I get asked often now, like when someone reads your book, what is the one thing that you want them to take away or that you're hoping that they do it? And in my process, like there's so many, but I've narrowed it down to one or two because I did the book tour and there's something that I really want to express. I'm gonna ask you the same question. Your book has a lot of great stuff in there. If someone were to listen to this conversation and go grab the book immediately, what is the one thing that you'd like or hope that they extract from the book?
I want them to feel empowered. I want them to feel like they have had everything inside of them that they need to live the life that they want. They just needed the tools. And this book is filled with the tools. It's filled with the tools to solve your problems, to empower you, to make you feel as good as possible in every single facet of your life on a day-to-day basis, feeling good now and feeling good in the long term. And I want them to feel empowered by those tools.
Pretty straightforward. Yeah.
What's yours?
I want everybody that reads my book to feel like they can do it. And what I mean by like do it, like whatever it is that they want to achieve, now they have the clarity, the tools, and it's attainable. You feel like there's nothing that you can't accomplish. If I could do all this, then so can they, and probably even better and faster. And it's available to them. And it seems like that's been the feedback. So I'm really happy with that.
I love that.
Yeah, this is great. One thing you talk about also is taking risks. And I've been very vocal on saying that I think the riskiest thing that we can do is to play it safe. So I'm
Mm.
wondering what you like, how important for you is taking risks in life?
Oh, it's so important. We actually ended the book with the tip, take the risk, because I think while I wanted people to feel empowered, and that's my main takeaway, I really wanted to leave them with that sentiment, with the idea that you should take the risk. And this is based on research from Dan Pink, who's an incredible journalist. And he did this survey of thousands and thousands of people around the globe to figure out what their greatest regrets were. And their regrets largely fell into 4 categories, which we get into in the book. But one of the most interesting findings that he shared was that by and large, we regret the risks that we do not take far more than the risks that we take. So in the moment, if you're trying to decide whether to take a risk, the science largely supports you taking that risk. And I found that really empowering in those moments in my life where I'm like, should I go after this book deal? Should I make this move? Should I reach out to that person that seems cool and ask them if they want to go on a friend date? I have that voice in the back of my head that says, take the risk. The science supports you taking the risk. We will regret, even if the risk, this is a really interesting part about the science, even if the thing doesn't work out, we regret it less than if we hadn't taken the risk at all.
1,000,000,000%. Right? Like people often don't get started because of fear, whether it's fear of failure, fear of looking silly, fear of other people's opinions. I encourage people to fear most the price of regret and wondering what could have been if you just took your shot, if you got in the arena, if you tried and you nailed it, right? Like even if you try something that you're passionate about, that you feel called to, if it doesn't work out, that's okay. Data, experiences, no big deal. But you will absolutely 100% regret not trying something or not leaning into something new or not taking some sort of calculated risk that had a high upside.
100%. And I love that you mentioned those things that can hold us back from taking those risks, like fear of being perceived a certain way, fear of judgment. I have a tip in the book that's think about your death, which sounds a little bit morbid, but I find it really useful for perspective setting to picture myself on my deathbed at the end of my life and think about the fact that, like, did worrying about how my body looked at the beach keep me from enjoying the beach? Like, does 85-year-old me, are they happy with that decision? I don't think so. I think they would have wanted me to enjoy every single second that I could have the sand on my toes and the smell of the ocean in my nose. And I find that getting a little bit of a zoom out and thinking about your deathbed self can help us get rid of that fear of judgment. The judgment is so fleeting, and the rewards from pushing through that judgment is so much more permanent and life altering.
I love that you talk about death often, because so do I. I think death is the ultimate life hack, because just the simple awareness that at some point the human experience comes to an end should be able to make you so much more present and mindful in the moment. And also,
100%.
yeah, and I did something similar when I started CLS in the pandemic. I did this eulogy exercise where I considered if this was it for me, like what would be said at my funeral, what kind of legacy, impact, contribution did I make, what kind of meaningful, if any, relationships that I have. And I didn't approve it, but I accepted the fact that I had significantly underachieved all across the board. And
Mm,
by doing that and understanding it, now I'm like, all right, what can I actually do? How can I actually lean into why I'm here or try new things or put myself out there? Even if it doesn't work, at least I can look myself in the mirror and say, I tried. I gave that thing everything I got. And that eulogy exercise really catapulted me to step into the unknown. And I think it's actually really important for people to consider the fact that this experience right here is finite. So now that you know that, what really matters in the grand scheme of things?
100%. And that's true in terms of achievement. That's true in terms of the relationships that we're prioritizing. That's true in terms of the way that we're spending our time, whether we're scrolling on the internet or reading a book or calling somebody that we love to have a conversation. It's true for every single part of our life. Once the moment is gone, it is gone. The moment we were just in is now gone forever, and we have one less moment left in our life. And I think keeping that perspective can be incredibly motivating and empowering.
I feel really connected to you right now. Like I have like a dopamine hit.
Aw,
This is
I'm
all
loving this conversation.
same. This is more of an experience, like a connection. It's beautiful. Um, you're a very successful entrepreneur. You travel a lot. Um, you talk about looking for new friends as an adult. I think that's so unique and cool that you even talk about that, because it's interesting. I had a conversation with my fiance maybe like a month or two ago. We're at dinner and we're like slightly arguing. And she was like, if we were to go to the Hamptons for a weekend, like who would you even want to go? Like who would you bring? Like, your
Mm,
friends right now? Because I used to be a very popular kid, and I'm putting quotations out there because whatever, I was inauthentic and I had groups of friends. But since I've really became my true authentic self and spread my wings, like all I really want to do is hang out with people like you and talk about growth and doing big things and productive conversations. That's just what I'm into right now. And so that's just the honest truth. And as a result, I don't have much in common with a lot of people from my past since I reinvented myself. And it doesn't mean that I think I'm better, they're worse. I just don't have much in common with them. So you talk about like finding friends as an adult. Why is that topic so important for you? And are you struggling with that yourself?
it's so important for me because I think a lot of us are lonely, and a lot of us make the assumption that everybody else has their set group of friends and we're the only person who feels lonely and there must be something wrong with us. And that is so not true. As you just said, I think a huge thing that happens in different phases in our life is we start to gravitate towards different people. And that's one reason, regardless of how set everybody else's friend group you think that it might be, most people are usually interested in making new friends at different phases in their life because those friends are going to reflect back the person that they feel that they are now. I'm not a huge fan of taking friends out of your life completely. I'm a big fan of moving them into different categories. So maybe maybe somebody used to be your like late night, long conversation, big secrets friend. And now they're more of like a yoga friend or a movie friend or somebody that you're having a little bit less of those deep conversations with. And I think having friends that fit into all of those different life categories is so important. But I think the first and most important step is not shaming yourself for not having the friendship situation that you think everybody else has, because they don't. I promise you. I get so many DMs from people, I get messages, emails from listeners. Everybody is struggling with this, just nobody wants to talk about it.
Right. And why not? Right. That's how maybe somebody hears it like, oh, I'm actually looking, I'm trying to find some people too, find my tribe. Now it's like,
100%. Yeah.
you,
So I have a few tips for making friends as an adult if you want some.
I would love some.
So one of my favorite ones, and this is based on research from Dr. Marissa G. Franco, and she's a friendship focused psychologist. And one of the ways that we make people like us more is simply by exposing ourselves to them more. So there's this really interesting study where they had a group of people attend a class, and it was a huge class, like a lecture with hundreds of people in it. And the people who they asked at the end of the lecture, like, how much do you like these people who attended the class? And not a single person in the lecture recognized any of the people, but they liked the people more who had attended the class more. So to make friends, often we think, oh, I'm going to like go to this one party, and if I didn't make a friend, then that's a problem. I'm going to go to this class, and if I didn't make a friend, that's a problem. But what we need to do is give ourselves recurrent exposure to people. So that means going to the same cafe to do your work every single week, going to the same yoga class at the same time every single week, joining a book club, joining a podcast club. We have podcast clubs for the Liz Moody podcast all over the country. It's such a good hack for making friends.
What's a
And
podcast club?
it's people, I didn't even start this. This is one of my listeners in Denver started a podcast club where they get together and they talk about the Liz Moody podcast. It's like a book club, but instead of reading the book, they listen to the podcast. And we now have them all over the country. You can go to lizmoody.com if you want to find one near you. But you need to have that recurrent exposure. And I find that so freeing, because sometimes I feel like I'm a failure if I went to an event where I was trying to make a friend and I don't feel like I made a friend at that event. And it's like, no, you just need to have that continual exposure, not that like one light up moment. So that's one tip. Make recurring plans, have something you can show up consistently week after week after week, month after month. That will help you make friends. And then two, and I think this really goes to the heart of a lot of the things we're talking about today, is that we think that vulnerability is going to make people like us less, but it makes people like us so much more. There is so much research behind the impact that vulnerability has on relationships. So when you're making those recurring plans, when you're having those conversations, you can even say something like, I've been feeling a little bit lonely lately. I would love to go out to coffee. I'm looking for friends right now. And you think, God, that's so embarrassing. Like, I should feel shame around that. But actually, that vulnerability is going to make the person like you more. So looking for those little moments where you can open up and be a little bit more vulnerable is going to help you cement those friendships.
I can concur. I noticed that, and I was typically a very private cat when I started a personal brand and so forth. And in the beginning stages, a couple of years back, every time I would be more open and vulnerable, I strengthened so much the connection with the community. And people ask me like how I built a community so fast. And I think there's a very big difference between an audience and a community. An audience is like, could be like metrics or fake followers. But when you have a community and you're vulnerable and you share and you support each other, it's just so beautiful. And nobody could really, I mean, at least for me, like I'm a comic book nerd. I always loved them. I could never really relate to Superman because he's kind of like an alien. Like, yeah, I know he has kryptonite, but it just wasn't relatable to me. But like Batman, he was a human, he fought crime, like that. It was attainable. Just there's something about vulnerability that helps people connect with somebody else and form a connection, and that's really what it's all about.
Yeah, Batman's only superpower is like that he's rich, isn't it?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
I'm not a comic book nerd, but he doesn't have any like inherent special strength or something, right? Yeah.
He's a human being.
Yeah. He has a lot of fun gadgets.
Yeah. But you're very vulnerable, and I think it's really beautiful. And you talk about things like transitioning off birth control and you stop drinking for a while. Was it hard for you to do that stuff, or you really just wanted to help other people by showing what you're going through? How was that process as you started becoming more vulnerable on social media and stuff like that?
I didn't find it hard at first. I will say I have an incredible community on the internet, but when posts start to go viral and kind of reach people outside of your community, the comments are always, you can always tell the second in the comments that a post is reaching people outside your community because the comments get so mean. So
Haters, yeah.
It's not that I don't like it for myself. I don't like it for myself. Like I'd prefer not to be the recipient of these types of comments, but it also just bums me out on a societal level. I'm just like, what do you need in your life that would keep you from lashing out at strangers on the internet this way? And I'd love to figure that out on a societal level, because I don't think it's a good thing that so many people are feeling that lack where they feel like lashing out at strangers. They don't feel heard in their life. They don't feel appreciated. I don't know what it is, but I definitely think something needs to happen there. But other than that, I really enjoy being vulnerable because I think that there's a lot of shiny bullshit on the internet, and I'm not really interested in being part of that. I know I've scrolled many times in my life and felt like my life is shit and I'm ugly and my relationships are shit and I'll never be good enough, and I don't want to be part of somebody's story in that way. I want people to see that you can make incredible changes and feel the way that you want to feel, and you're still human and you're still going to have hard days, and here's how we're going to get through that.
Right. And in regards to like the haters, hurt people.
I
And
know.
experiences too, like even this week. And I was saying, I was like, if that person only understood that this is a finite experience, they could take the energy of doing something negative and then not do that and allocate it to bettering their own life. Like how much more productive would that be for society, for everybody? It is a little mind-boggling, I know, but
It would be, but like, how do we get them there? Like, that's my problem is like, if hurt people, there's a lot of hurt people on the internet. And
there
why
is.
are there so many hurt people right now? And what can we do about that on a societal level, whether that's systemic issues? I don't know, but it makes me sad that it seems to be so pervasive.
Well, one thing that we could do is get your book in the world. And so thank you for that. I can't even
Thank you.
look at the time. This time, I think that was the quickest podcast I ever had. It was just like, I don't know, it was special interaction.
Yeah, it was a great conversation. You're a great interviewer.
Thank you. And I know you have your own show. If you're ever looking for a guest, I'd love to support. Um, there's so many other things I wanted to ask you, but we'll have to bring you back for sequel. So many more
All
things to
right.
do. I know the answer to this, but our audience is really low and engaging. What's the best way for them to support you? I imagine it's the book. What's the best way for them to grab it? Do you have any bonuses? How could people support?
Yeah, so we have $1,000 travel credit right now, actually, if you order the book anywhere that you want to order the book, and then you go to 100waystoChangeYourLife.com. That's 100waystoChangeYourLife.com. And that's just a little bonus for people who want to get the book in their hands. You can find the book wherever books are sold, and you can find my podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. It's the Liz Moody Podcast.
And when does the Audible come out?
On October 17th. So that's the release date of the book too. I'm not sure when this is going to go up, but October 17th is when everything hits the universe.
Oh, wow. Have you listened to it yet? No, right?
I'm never going to listen to it.
Come on. Why?
I just don't feel the need to do that to myself. I'm so proud of it, and I'm so excited for other people to listen to it, but I'm not going to do that.
I think there's something really, especially you have a very successful podcast. Like your voice is a big part of your brand. And I know it's demanding task, but I'm proud of you. It's good that you did the Audible. It's very authentic. And I think authors should, if their voice is a part of their brand, at least.
100%. I was nervous to do it, and there were definitely moments where I was like, should I have just let them hire an actor or something? But I'm ultimately very glad that I was able to do it, again, because of what we talked about, where you can like really put that intonation and meaning behind each word. So I'm really satisfied with how the audio came out.
This was awesome. This was so special. Hang up for 1 sec. I want to connect to you after, Liz. I want you to know the definition of being in alignment, authenticity, and deep curiosity. I could personally guarantee your best is yet to come. Keep on spreading your wings and leaving your mark on this world. So much love and respect for you. Thank you so much for stopping by and dropping these priceless, juicy nuggets today.
Thank you so much, Craig. I really appreciate it.
I could talk to you all day, if I'm being honest.
Amazing. That was so fun.
Yeah, that was great. I'd love to stay connected. I'd love to do many more things together.
Yeah, perfect. I would love that too.